It's WVVA in Focus, a weekly program about important issues and events in the two Virginias.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of In Focus. This morning, we are putting the spotlight on Bluefield State University, formerly known as Bluefield State College. So joining us this morning is BSU President Dr. Robin Capehart, and it's always good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Well, good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is a big deal that Bluefield State is now Bluefield State University.
Right.
Let's discuss what this means for the area and for the school.
Well, first of all, you've got to congratulate a lot of people on campus because to become a university as a public institution in West Virginia, there are certain standards you have to meet. And when we came here 3.5 years ago, this was obviously one of our goals was to elevate the college to a university. A lot of it's because of the prestige that it does. But what it also does is it also makes us step up our game in what we do. And that's really become our focus now that we've become a university.
What is the process to become a university? Let's talk
about
that.
There's several standards that you have to fulfill. There's some things like changing your mission statement, but you have to offer a graduate program, which we started on right after we got here. And matter of fact, we're taking our first students right now for our MBA program that's been launched. And so that was one of the first steps we had. Another step was you have to have your faculty have to have certain credentials, a certain number of credentials, which are called terminal degrees, and we met that standard. And then there's other things that, like I said, that deal with your mission and things like that that we had to change. But those were the two big ones. And
how does that help with enrollment and recruitment?
Well, you know one thing that I've noticed it does. I was at my last school. We became a university.
At West Liberty?
At West Liberty, and there's only 3 schools. I've done 2 out of 3 of them, so.
That's good.
But what they did was it actually opened the doors for a lot of international students. Internationally, a college is seen almost like a trade school, but if you want to go to get academic work, you go to a university. And we saw at West Liberty that it really increased the interest. We went to almost 5% of our students being international students at West Liberty. I think it'll have the same impact here. But what it does for the campus is, as I mentioned, it elevates the prestige of the institution. It elevates the visibility of the institution. Mm-hmm. But the big thing it does for us is it gives us an opportunity to really change the mindset of what our focus needs to be. And that's what we've started already. On July 1st, we gave an address to the campus upon becoming a university, and we talked about the colleges, the university is now focused on one thing. And I know this sounds strange, but it's focused on learning. We want to become the institution that is focused on learning, our students learning. Learning is actually pretty easy. You set standards, you give the instruction, and then you basically go back and look and see if your students are learning or not, and if they are or aren't, you make the changes accordingly and run through the process again. Surprisingly, a lot of colleges don't do that. Most colleges, including Bluefield State, they were captured by this basically enrollment sweepstakes. Let's just get more and more and more and more and more and more students. That's not a sign of success if you're getting more and more students, but they're going through their years at the institution, and they're coming out and they really don't have content, or they don't have the skill set that they need.
Right, because it's not just about numbers, it's about the quality of their education.
Exactly. We want to be able to prove to employers, we want to be able to prove to parents, we want to be able to prove to, to the students themselves and prospective students that if you come here, you're going to get an education. We don't have a climbing wall. But, when you're situated where we are, you don't need a climbing wall because going to class is a climbing experience.
Up on a hill, literally.
So we don't have a climbing wall, we don't have a Starbucks, But what we want to be able to say is you come here, you're going to get a high quality education, and when you get out, you're going to get a job. We actually do that a great deal right now, especially in such areas as engineering and nursing and radiology technology. Those are all really very difficult classes. But one of the problems we faced is students coming out of high school not prepared for college. And I think there was some data that was just released a few weeks ago, a presentation made to the State Board of Education that showed this incredible amount of students who are not meeting minimum expectations. Well, that becomes a problem for us because we will have open enrollment. So when our students come here and they're not college ready, They write the check to the school. They're our student. We've got to make them college ready. So when we set out these 3 objectives we have now, being a university, is the first thing is we got to make sure they're college ready. We're actually creating, starting next year, a school of preparatory studies. And it's a prep school. And what it'll be kids coming out of high school who don't have the skill set and the content knowledge to actually go into college. We'll basically be bringing them up so that they're at the starting gate, because we get so many students that aren't at the starting gate. But we want to make sure that they're at the starting gate. There's a difference between college readiness and those who want to learn. We want the students who want to learn. We get a lot of those. We get a lot of students that come out very difficult economic, social, cultural situations. A lot of them come out of it. They've had a lot of problems, but they want to learn, and that's the students we want.
Right, and that's key, is to be teachable no matter what your circumstances are. And in what ways would you say that some of these students, or that you've learned about at this meeting that you were at, that they aren't ready, that they're lacking before they're entering college?
Well, there's one deficiency there was a book that came out back about 15 years ago called Academically Adrift. It basically says what happened to learning on college campuses. And what it identified at college campuses across the country is that there's 3 critical skills that you need no matter what you're studying, no matter what discipline you're going into, no matter what field of study. You need to be able to think critically, you need to be able to solve problems, and you need to be able to communicate. Those 3 things.
Yes.
Those are skills that cross everything. And what we find is that obviously it's anecdotal at this point, but we're getting ready to go through a process where we're going to measure where our students are when they come in so that we can measure where they are, where they're going out. And we're going to actually provide assistance to our faculty to make sure that those types of skills are ingrained in what they do. So, you know, the thing about it, there's a great quote by Eric Hoffer who one time said, he said, you know, he said the learners will inherit the earth because the learned will be living in a world that no longer exists. And if you think about it, it's, you know, the things you learn in college, you know, 10 years from now, you better have those skills that you can learn. And if we don't prepare our students to be lifetime learners like that, we're not doing our job. So we want to be known as the institution that does that.
Right, and a lot of times when students get into the workforce, if they're lacking certain skills, those who are hiring them are saying, well, hey, why didn't they learn that in college? So you want to get those students ready. Well, we do have to take a quick break, but coming up, we'll share a story with you. We talked to some students recently on the campus of BSU and how the semester is going so far. We'll have that right after this break. Welcome back, everyone. This morning we're talking about Bluefield State University, and students from BSU can breathe a sigh of relief knowing they'll have classes in person this year. I know that was a big thing during COVID where students were learning remotely. So recently our meteorologist Jeffrey Houle visited the university and he talked to some students that are happy to be back. Take a listen.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of students had to deal with online learning and lost the ability to do hands-on activities.
All the classes that are hands-on, like all my classes, I had chemistry and like biology that have labs. You can't do that online. You have to, it's one of those in person, you have to do it in person. And then like, if you're not good at math like that, it's not it.
Even students from other countries have been affected by COVID and welcome the return to in-person learning.
Well, I like it because I was playing tennis. So I had like a lot of times playing tennis instead of going to school because of COVID, but now I have to go to school, so I cannot play tennis that much.
Were you happy to be back in person?
I was happy because it's boring being in my house.
Seniors graduating this year started the year in person, then transitioned to remote learning, and are now ending where they started, in person. Here for you at Bluefield State University, I'm Jeffrey Houle.
So, Dr. Capehart, we heard Jeffrey talking to those students there, and they were saying they're just so happy to be back on campus. What are you hearing from students as far as the transition from learning in a remote fashion during COVID and now being back in person?
Well, we've heard from a lot of students that they're really glad to be back. When you look at 40% of our students are probably either in engineering or the health sciences. Those are the types of disciplines that lend themselves to a real need for in-person instruction. You know, we also found out during that period that online instruction is not for everybody. You've got to get we talked about students wanting to learn. If you've got students, like we have a couple of programs that are online, but one's part of our master's degree, and the other one is our LP and RN program. those are professionals that are really trying to upgrade their credentials, and so they're very dedicated and very timely and things like that. But there's a lot of students that when they appear on campus, they don't really have the skill set or the discipline to do online learning, and we've learned a lesson from that coming along. I think it's the same thing the K through 12 schools learned by a number of students who went to online learning and how far back they came. By the way, we did see after COVID, we saw a significant increase in the number of students needing remedial education simply because they were getting kind of passed through, and when they landed on our campus, it's our job to bring them up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And what other lessons did you learn from dealing with COVID and the pandemic? It was unprecedented times. What did you learn, and what lessons did you take to BSU during that time?
Well, I think the biggest lesson was the value of online learning. We had planned to launch a massive online presence, but then once again we found that in so many different disciplines we had, it didn't benefit the student. And that's what we're about. We're about our students learning. You know, too many times people do things for their own convenience. I got a call the other day saying, oh, we'll have a Zoom call. And I said, no, you'll come here and be here in person. Yeah. Because the only reason you want a Zoom call is you want to do it for your convenience, not mine. Right. So if you want us to pay you, you will come here and we'll do it in person. Exactly. And we've learned that, I don't know, it's just the in-person instruction is extremely important. We heard that from a lot of faculty too. And it's not that they couldn't do it. We actually did it fairly well. We were actually in pretty good position to do it because some of the training that had taken place beforehand. But what we've seen now is it really narrows the scope of students who are prepared to take online instruction.
So what majors are desired right now? I know we're hearing a lot about a nursing shortage in West Virginia, but what majors would you say are in high demand, and what are you hearing from employers as far as their need for workers? Well, I think you could probably guess what a lot of them are. Obviously, engineering, anything in the STEM area, anything from our STEM college is in demand. Healthcare is extremely high. Education, I mean, there's an extreme demand for education. You know, the problem is that we just don't have students that want to go into it. I mean, you take for example, nursing. I know there's a nursing I know they're going to start some other nursing programs around. Number one, you got to find students who are qualified to go into a nursing program. You know, nursing is something. Well, I'll ask you this: do you want a nurse who took 3 semesters to get a C to stick the needle in your arm? No, exactly. Okay, right. So it's very. I mean, nursing is the kind of thing that you'll get your RN, but you're going to be good at it when you get it. And finding that many students in an area of a shrinking population has become extremely difficult. And so, you know, we actually talk to a lot of healthcare providers. We actually have 14 healthcare programs that are not being provided by, some of them are 2-year programs that are not being provided by the community college. And quite frankly, the tuition is low at the community colleges, and for a good reason. But when you also have low tuition, it also means you don't have enough money to pay these high demand fields where your faculty are very expensive. And so we have 14 of them that we're ready to push forth, and we've got a wonderful facility over there. We've got 300,000 square feet, 63 acres of flat ground in the middle of Bluefield, of which we occupy about 240,000 square feet. Now we've got a lot of room to build classroom space, and we really want to become a healthcare trainer for all of West Virginia. Yeah, and that's really good. And let me ask you this: what's the latest on the dorms for students? Well, you know, we actually had an interesting problem this year. We actually had more students coming than we actually had space, even though we added 40 beds. And so right now we've got some students that we put into what used to be called faculty housing on campus. They're these little cottages we have, and we have a lot of our honor students in those because they're right on campus. We actually had to house some of them in a local hotel. I think the idea, though, with the number that we had to house was, you know, there's always students that we lose before Labor Day or right after Labor Day. A lot of them go home on Labor Day. And it's not because it's not the school. It's a lot of them just get homesick. And, you know, kids just get homesick, and they weren't ready to. Maybe they weren't ready to go to college and things like that. So we think at the end of the day, we're probably going to be able to put everybody we have in our campus housing. Heritage Village, which we actually had, we finished phase 1 of Heritage Village, which had tremendous difficulties due mostly
you know, to the ground we found that we were trying to build it on, along with COVID coming along and the stop and start and the rain, and you know, we just had so many problems there. So that's why we were truly blessed when the hospital became available, because it allowed us to put beds. We're probably going to get 40 more beds out of the what we call the Medical Education Center. We'll probably, I would say within the next 2 years, we hope to have all 120 beds available at Heritage Village, because we're back to working on some financing that got kind of dropped because we shifted our focus to, you know, getting the hospital occupied. So we've got a lot going on, but you know, eventually we want to be able to cover as many students that want to stay on campus as possible.
And I know we talked a couple years ago when you first started here at BSU. I think it was maybe 2019, but I had asked you then what goals did you have at that time? So what would you say that you've achieved since 2019, and what would you like to achieve looking ahead?
You know, I remember I was standing on the sidelines of the first football game, first football game since 1980 last year, and the team came running out on the field. It was a very emotional moment, not just for me, but for, I mean, a lot of alumni and the people that had saw the program. And what I said was, you know, I said, well, we opened dorms on campus, and we've got a football team. Yeah. I'm done. That's what I want to do. I want to leave right now. I'm going to leave while things are good. And so, but doing those things, expanding campus housing, becoming a university, and now our real focus is changing the mindset of what people think about Bluefield State, both on campus and off campus, to be a campus where we focus on learning. Yeah. If you come there, you've got to want to learn. I asked one of our admissions people, I said, do we have a line on our application in which it says, are you coming here to learn, yes or no? Because if you're coming for another reason, there's plenty of other colleges that can go, that you can pay a 4-year cost of admission and go have fun and be, you know, and kind of glide through, or you can come here, and when you walk across the stage, you're going to know that the money you spent on your education was an investment in your future. Right, because there's a difference between active learning and someone who's just there, like you said, like just sitting and drifting by. I'm glad you mentioned the football team. That's a big deal because it had been, what, since the early 80s? It was 1980, I think, was the last season. Yeah.
So how's it going so far with the
I talked to the coach about a week into it. He said it's night and day. He said the one thing they missed last year was, I mean, we were 3-3 with all freshmen. So we played 2 CIAA schools, which is kind of our aspirational conference, and at least at that point. And we beat both of them, and so we were pretty excited about that. I think it's kind of interesting that we beat 3 teams last year, and every one of them fired their coach. I don't know. Oh, wow. I don't know what that says about us, but every one of them fired. And actually, a couple of them actually offered our coach a job. But he's very high. He said the one thing we have this year is we've got leadership. We've got a couple of juniors, but we've got some sophomores left over from last year, and then a lot of freshmen. And he said we needed that leadership on the field because you've got to have those players that really get into leading the team. We didn't have that last year, so he says we're so far ahead of where we were last year. It's amazing. And you know, we had a lot of injuries at the end of the year. The last game we played, maybe we shouldn't have, and I think the coach, that was his, you know, that was what he said. He said we should have played this one, and I think it was probably me that forced him to play it. So I think it was my fault. But you know, our last game of the year last year we actually had to cancel because we were down to 38 kids, and we didn't have enough to play. But here's what you got to realize about last year's team too. These were all freshmen, which means a year ago they were playing high school football. Right. The hardest hit they took in high school, they got hit like that every play in every game. And so it's a totally different experience. There's so much more speed when you get to the college level there is at the high school level. And so, to put that on a bunch of freshmen, I think they performed outstanding. I'm so proud of our coaching staff. We actually lost 2 of our coaches to head coaching, one to a head coaching job and one to an offensive coordinator's job.
Where did they go? Who were they?
Coach Gales went to Lincoln University in Missouri. He's now the head coach there. And you know what? I'm not sure where the other coach went. But I think he's in a PSAC school, I think. Okay. Well, interesting. Well, thank you for updating us on the football team. Come on out. Remember our first game. Our first game is 6 o'clock Thursday evening, September 1st. A week, September 1st. And so we hope everybody turns out. All right. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Good morning, everyone. This morning we've been talking about all the great things happening at Bluefield State University in Bluefield, West Virginia, formerly Bluefield State College, now Bluefield State University. Joining us once again is the university president, Dr. Capehart. So we were talking about football in the last segment, but there's so many great sports at BSU.
Yeah, we launched about 9 new sports last year. We actually have 3 more sports in the hopper that we're getting ready to launch, but our biggest goal in sports right now is to get a conference affiliation. Bluefield State didn't go to the GMAC like a lot of other schools did in the conference when the Mountain East Conference was formed. And so they've been without a conference. And what really kills you there is scheduling. For example, in basketball, when most conference schedules are played in January or February, everybody wants us in December and late November. So we get real top heavy there, and we're lucky to get a few games, get some games in January and February. But we're in serious negotiation with a couple of conferences right now. We've got one that we're fairly certain that they're going to make us an offer, and so we hope that we'll be able to announce that in the next few weeks. But that's going to be really important because we've added a lot of sports. Women's soccer has already started. It's going really well. We do some cross country this time of year. We do some golf this time of year. And we have acro tumbling come up. We've added women's wrestling. And I know everybody kind of grins, but it's actually one of the fastest growing NCAA sports is women's wrestling. And we've got hired coaches for that. And one thing about the quality of the programs we've seen is we've actually had a couple of coaches leave to go to better opportunities, and that's fine. But when we do that, people have looked at what we're doing at Bluefield State, and we usually get a lot of interest from people who are really experienced coaches to want to come here. So we've got all these other sports that we're starting to schedule. Of course, we've had volleyball, and then softball, baseball will be in the spring. But some of these winter sports are our cross country, as I mentioned, track and field. We've added so many, and the one we'll probably bring on in January will be bowling. And bowling is a NCAA sport, but only for women. So it's a women's sport. So and our coaches have just been great. I mean, there's one thing. When you just launch 9 new sports, this isn't like launching one every 9 years. This is launching 9 new sports. Derek Price, our athletic director, has done a great job of it. We've worked really hard to make them financially feasible. There's no, when you look at the students you bring in, and this is what always people say, well, how can you're putting money into sports and not into acting? Well, you got to understand, we did a poll one time at my last college, and 80 to 85% of the students who come to play a sport come to play a sport. And if you did not have that sport, they would not be here. They would go somewhere else to play that sport. So as long as you bring in enough students and that you back out your expenses and the kind of scholarships that you give and those types of things, it's actually a financial plus for it. Plus, it's really broadened the number. I mean, right now we're at students, I believe, from 32 states. We had applications from 49 states. 2 years ago, we had students from 7 states, applications from like 12 states. And now I know we were at 49 states, and we're about ready to send someone to South Dakota to get that one student so we can at least get someone to apply.
Yeah, send them out to the Badlands.
but it's brought in more students from more areas. Part of the problem we've had here is without housing, most of our students could only come from an hour drive. Well, that's southern West Virginia, where we've got slowly declining population. So that number is shrinking. And when you look at things like healthcare, nursing, rad tech, engineering, the number of students that are capable and want to go into that's even getting tighter. So having the housing was obviously one of our biggest priorities, and it's been a big plus.
Okay, we have a little bit over 2 minutes left in the show, but you mentioned acro tumbling, I believe. What is that?
Acro tumbling is a really fast-growing women's sport, and it's really what it sounds like. It's acrobatics. It's not cheerleading, because I don't think you scream while you're doing it, unless. I guess you land wrong. But it's a women's sport. The Mountain East Conference has it. We've added it. And our coach did a really great job of doing some recruiting this year. We were going to start it last year, and we just didn't have the number of students number of athletes to do it yet. So they saved eligibility, and a lot of them are back this year. So I think it starts in early January, but it's a really fast-growing sport.
Interesting. That and the bowling and the women's wrestling too.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So any concluding thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers, maybe prospective students out there, parents of students, grandparents, anyone listening?
Right. No, this is not, what we've tried to do. If you go back to when Bluefield State was formed back in 1895, the students coming here were students that faced a lot of really difficult challenges. I mean, they were one generation removed from slavery. A lot of them had no formal training whatsoever when they came to what was the institute back then. And the fact of the matter is, though, is that the one thing they all shared is that they wanted to learn.
Yep.
They want to learn. We want to embrace that heritage so that the students come here. They come here because they want to learn. Look, nobody tried to navigate higher education to get to their degree that I did, because all I want to do is I want to go to law school. But the fact is that we want those students to we want these students to come here that want to learn and take advantage of every opportunity they have.
And that's right, and that's a good lesson for anyone out there. Be hungry to learn. Well, we've run out of time, but that does it for us. Dr. Capehart, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for us. We'll see you all again next Sunday.